It all depends how we're going to be thinking about the metaverse. But if, let's just say, we're thinking about the metaverse through mixed reality lenses, there will be a barrier towards mainstream adoption. That's probably why Mark Zuckerberg is talking about this as a 5-year goal as opposed to like a 1 or 2 year goal.
Hey gang, it's Tuesday, October 19th. Jeremy and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar. Could I have said it faster? Maybe. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by Director of the eMarketer Briefing. It's Jeremy Goldman.
Great to be with you.
Hey chap. So today's fact, sailors created the half-staff flag morning tradition. The first record of a flag being flown at half-staff for morning was when the captain of Hurst's Ease, a British ship, died on an expedition to Canada in 1612. On its return to London, the ship's crew lowered the flag to honour their departed captain. The British started the tradition of flying the flag half-mast at exactly one flag's width lower on days of mourning to make room for an invisible flag on top of that, representing their loss. The trend caught on and was truly solidified in 1799 when the US Navy ordered all flags to fly at half-mast to mourn the death of George Washington. In 1954, President Eisenhower issued Proclamation 3044, standardizing the requirement for all federal buildings.
That's going to be a Jeopardy question one day, and I'm going to thank you when I'm on that episode. So that was great.
You're welcome. A wonderful tradition. Anyway, today's real topic, welcome to the Metaverse. Whatever the hell that means. Let's try and figure it out. We'll figure it out together. Or we won't, and you'll be more confused in 20 minutes. As Sarah Fisher of Axios notes, the Metaverse is a label Facebook and others in the industry are increasingly using to describe a next-generation online work and play environment. The term metaverse was coined by Neil Stephenson in his 1992 novel Snow Crash, where humans are represented as avatars interacting with each other and software agents with a 3D virtual space, notes Joan Westenberg of Inc.com. Ernest Cline's 2011 novel Ready Player One and Spielberg's film adaptation offer more modern examples of a metaverse. But how far away from this digital life are we? Well, as Miss Westenberg goes on to explain, every day we create and share content online. We share our thoughts and pictures on social. We buy and sell things on sites. We play games and watch videos on apps. We are heading towards creators building entire worlds for digital versions of ourselves to explore and interact with. She explains that just wearing a VR headset is not what the metaverse is about. It's the experience of choosing and owning a digital avatar, creating original work and finding a connection with virtual experiences that match the emotional value of offline ones. It's valuing the digital world on a par with the physical. We already have cryptocurrency that provides us with digital currency and non-fungible tokens, NFTs, that have shown the path to virtual possessions and ownership. So once we agree on a common practice of how to trade these things, we could be a lot closer than we think. Or Jeremy, maybe we're so far away it's painful. I don't really know what to make of this. One thing I came away with after reading all of this is there are about 1,000 different ways to define the metaverse. Ask 1,000 people, you get 1,001 different replies. What do you make of the current state of the so-called metaverse?
I'm glad that you actually threw it to me that way, because that's one thing I was going to interrupt and say is that this is something that really still has to be defined. We're still in kind of the nascent years of defining what the metaverse is and what it won't be. And I think that, it's important to note probably that Facebook is one of the top organizations that wants to really define what the metaverse is, simply because it sees a lot of benefit in essentially being the platform in a way for the metaverse to be a main gateway into the metaverse. That allows them to be the platform that's not dependent on another gateway, such as going through a Google Android OS or a Apple OS to enter the Facebook ecosystem, which has caused them a lot of issues, obviously, with Apple's privacy update in particular.
So what I kind of gather from this is that the internet is version 1.0. And the metaverse is the next version of the internet. It's going to be the internet, but version 2.0. And the internet is in 2D, and the metaverse will be in 3D. And Facebook wants to kind of be, as you said, the platform, the new internet, if you will, the gateway into that world. It kind of makes sense because they have the beta version of their Oculus app called Horizon lets people have VR meetings. So that's supposed to be kind of a step towards this idea of the metaverse. Oculus actually accounts for half of the extended reality headset shipments, according to Counterpoint. Way behind in second place is Sony with 12%. So as it currently stands, if you want to get into the world of extended reality, that's virtual reality, augmented reality, or mixed reality using a headset, you're going to be going through Facebook at the moment. But Jeremy, I'm just unsure whether people are going to be comfortable with that, given Facebook's issues as of late and as of always, maybe.
It's an interesting point, and there aren't that many other great options out there. So short of regulation that reins in Facebook, it's almost its fiduciary duty to its shareholders is to maximize profits. And one way that they're going to be able to do that is to have an ecosystem that they can monetize and really grow. But, one of the key things that's important to note here is that the way the metaverse is currently constructed, it's not entirely, but it's largely dependent on hardware that is often relatively expensive, right? So it all depends how we're going to be thinking about the metaverse. But if, let's just say, we're thinking about the metaverse through mixed reality lenses, no pun intended, then there will be a barrier towards mainstream adoption, and that's probably why Mark Zuckerberg is talking about this as a 5-year goal as opposed to like a 1 or 2 year goal.
Yeah, one of the ways in could be gaming, particularly multiplayer games, seem to have paved the way for the metaverse, especially when it comes to infrastructure, writes Nick Gardner of Adweek. You've got some platforms, Jeremy, that some people consider, again, stepping stones towards the metaverse or mini metaverses already. You have things like Fortnite, you have things like Minecraft, Roblox, even Second Life, which has been around for a really long time. I'm wondering if you can see any other platforms other than Facebook, one of these platforms, as being, I don't know, kind of the leader now and maybe going forward in the space of the metaverse.
In a lot of ways, I think Roblox is a really interesting example to pay attention to, because Fortnite started out as one thing and almost started morphing immediately into something else. But at its core, it's a game that now there are concerts that are happening with avatars, within that space. I think Roblox is interesting because it kind of took some cues from Fortnite and has done a number of different things. I know you've covered on the podcast with some of their interesting ad campaigns and partnerships with Hyundai and Vans. To me, Roblox and these open worlds where people can represent themselves through avatars and who you are in the quote unquote real world doesn't really matter as much, to the point that you brought up before. I think that those are really, that it's theirs to lose. They have a lot of opportunity to build, and especially when you're talking about a 3D expansive world that is not dependent necessarily on a VR headset. There's a lot of opportunity to grow that and to get a lot of real estate, a lot of mind share that way. Yeah,
that article from eMarketer Briefing, written by Nina Getson, one of our Insider Intelligence analysts, Roblox leading the branded gaming Big Bang, she writes, with Hyundai and Vans partnerships. One of them was Hyundai's mobility adventure that aims to get younger audiences familiar with driving by letting players take cars on virtual test drives. So car makers would drop in a virtual version of their car into the world and you could drive it. The second one was Vans World. Lets fans deck out their avatar in Vans gear and skateboard around a Vans theme park. Gaming, people might think, oh, well, it's a bit niche. It's for a lot of folks. 38% of video game players 18 to 34 and 7% are over the age of 65, according to Statista. Women account for 45% of gamers in the US, and 2 out of 5 people across the world are gamers. Gaming could just be the beginning, but it's already a huge market. Jeremy, I keep thinking of The Matrix. I keep thinking eventually, that's unfortunately, maybe that's where we're going to end up.
Well, it's all about if you deliver a better experience, right? We've never really thought about before, can there be a competitor for real life?
Right.
And in some ways, a good way of thinking about the metaverse, it is a competitor for real life. I actually have some really good data building on your gaming data. This is something from Wunderman Thompson that actually published just this September. They polled people who had heard of the metaverse and who had never heard of the metaverse. And let's just take the essentially early adopters, the people who've heard of the metaverse, right? In terms of things that they're interested in doing within a metaverse-like experience, digital movie viewing, 87% were interested in it. Going to a digital concert, 78%. A digital player musical, 76%. So I can go on. A digital business conference, 74%. These are a lot of people who are very intrigued about the idea at the very least of giving things like this a try and seeing if they can surpass their experience in the quote unquote real world.
Yeah. I was surprised to see digital movie viewing at the top. I guess if it's a more engaging, if you're putting on a headset maybe and you're seeing that movie in more of a kind of a 3D type experience, then perhaps maybe something people are familiar with anyway with 3D glasses. So maybe it's not much of a leap as a digital sporting event or a digital business conference, perhaps.
It is very intriguing to me, the fact that all this research is being done at a time where people have less familiarity with these experiences in real life. So for instance, did people forget to some extent what it's like to go to a play in real life, and therefore they're more open to the digital play, metaverse play experience?
Yeah, how open would they be to these types of experiences in a non-pandemic world? That's a great point. Let's talk about the future of mixed reality. James Vincent of The Verge wrote a recent piece on the future of mixed reality, saying recent research from academics at the University of Duisburg-Essen and ETH Zurich, along with the AI team at Porsche, however you say that, built an AI system called Transformer, I guess. It could be Transformer, but M and the is spelled weird. Transformer, but at the end of it, it's a capital M and a capital R. Why do companies do this to me?
And better question is, why does Marcus always pick articles that have very hard to pronounce words in it? That's one thing I've never figured out.
No, I don't know what I'm doing with myself. It's called that. Anyway, it detects objects like cars and people, and it removes them and then replaces them with CGI alternatives in real time. So what am I talking about? If you hold up a tablet or a smartphone and access the camera, and you hold that up to the world that you're seeing, the people walking that you can see can be replaced by like zombies who are doing exactly the same movements the real life people are doing. So if I held up my phone, there was 5 people in front of me and they were walking around, you could turn on this feature and they would all be zombies. There wouldn't be people plus zombies. The people and the movements they're making would be exactly the movements that the zombies are making. So the in real life objects are not just covered up, like with Snapchat AR lenses or Apple's Memoji. They're edited out entirely and replaced with these CGI models. The CGI replacements, they're not the best quality at the minute by any stretch of the imagination, but that will quickly improve. Jeremy, your initial reaction to this vision of the future of mixed reality?
It's obviously nascent, but it is interesting to see even who is looking at this, right? It's Porsche, presumably trying to figure out how they can entertain people when they're stuck in traffic in the future, which is very interesting. Just the idea that we just have to be constantly stimulated all the time, and this is something that obviously you can kind of imagine down the line there being some nefarious actors that get their hands on things like this and use this type of technology for more nefarious purposes, as opposed to this, from an entertainment standpoint. But it just goes to show we're really at, to take a baseball analogy, in the first inning of people figuring out what, augmented reality can wind up doing across a number of different industries.
Yeah, one of the really cool examples I thought was Porsche has also built a prototype system called SoundRide, which uses a car's machine vision to detect changes in scenery and cue up appropriate music. So you could be driving through, as the article notes, through a beautiful scenic route in the Alps, and this SoundRide device would detect that, and the music could change to fit the backdrop. Maybe some classical music comes on or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I think it'd be a lot more impressive if it can hear your girlfriend breaking up with you as you're driving, and then it switches the music based off of
sad
other cues. Breaking up is hard to do.
That's so dark, but pretty interesting. Ms. Westenberg of Inc.com thinks the metaverse will be the most powerful marketing channel for the brands of tomorrow, with trillions of dollars of potential ad spend available to in real life brands in the new metaverse. And entertainment and media are the massive opportunities, she continues, with concerts, sporting events and conferences all ripe for disruption. Some of those things that Jeremy mentioned in the Wunderman Thompson research. The future of content, e-commerce and engagement is in the metaverse, Miss Westenberg suggests. Your job is to prepare for that future today. And so there was an article by our Insider Intelligence research analyst Man Chung points to a few ways that marketers will tap into the metaverse. We mentioned two already, the Hyundai Mobility Adventure and the Vans worlds, the branded worlds within Roblox. But Man Chung points to a few other examples. Number one, Nintendo's Animal Crossing. It's banned in China but offers branded islands. Number two, Fortnite has been hosting virtual concerts with real-life artists. Jeremy, you mentioned that earlier. And QQ Speed, a mobile game developed by Tencent, lets brands such as Rolls-Royce design their own virtual cars. You could argue that's similar to the Hyundai example we gave earlier. Jeremy, your thoughts on these examples and any others we might expect to see soon with regards to advertisers getting involved in the metaverse?
Yeah, I think that you're going to start to see a lot more of, specifically from an advertising perspective. I think that especially for something so new, there's a lot of interest in it. I actually have some other stats for you that I looked up. Forrester had something in their blog last month in September. According to 22% folks in the US and 15% in the UK, they think that brands should advertise in the metaverse. 13 and 19% for the UK and the US think brands should build more branded experiences in the metaverse. And this is at a point where a lot of people still don't know what the metaverse is, right? So I think that you probably will expect a lot of consumers to get interested in having branded experiences within the metaverse. And of course, brands want to be ahead of that because you can get all the nice buzz and be written up in the trade publications if you do something before everybody else. So I'm expecting to see a lot more interesting implementations. And I think that this is also a very fun time to cover it because the rules are not yet written, right? So everybody's going to try to do something different to engage with customers across a number of different metaverse-like platforms.
Final thing I want to mention, I saw an article in Axios just before this recording, actually. The metaverse might be competing with holoportation. It lets you beam yourself anywhere, writes Jennifer A. Kingson of Axios. A company called Portal, Portl, in all caps, of course, sells a 7-foot booth in which you can beam a 3D image of yourself anywhere in the world. Ms. Kingston explains that in the age of COVID-19, it's valuable to have a way to project someone realistically from point A to point B. The technology, while still a bit expensive and cumbersome, a bit expensive. It's like $100,000 for one of these things.
Well, that's why, Marcus, we only put in for 5 of them in our office, right? Because we can only afford about 5.
Exactly. Can make anything from the classroom learning to celebrity appearances and business meetings more vivid and compelling. They look pretty cool, Jeremy. I have to say, I mean, you may just say, oh, well, what's the difference from watching someone on a screen? But it's literally the way that I look currently being beamed to another place in another part of the world. Holoportation, any thoughts?
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of experimentation with things that are along these lines for years now. Essentially, if you can see somebody through a 2D screen versus if you can see something that is a little bit more of a true representation of what that person looks like, there's actually been studies on this where if I was wearing a VR headset and had a VR experience talking to you now, we're able to have more empathy with one another and you feel a little closer to a real life experience. So the thinking is that, yes, if you can have a true sense of somebody when they're not actually there physically in front of you, then it is a higher fidelity experience. So again, it kind of comes back to what we were talking about before with VR headsets, which is that the cost does have to come down. I know that the Portal Mini is coming out next year, which is about 2 feet tall and it'll cost $3,000. And that's obviously pushing things in the right direction. And some of these things will probably stand out by the very fact that there won't be that many of them. But for things like this to go mainstream, obviously cost has to come down significantly.
Every military family should be given one of these. Can you imagine being able to see the person who you're missing, who's overseas, but see them in this kind of holoportation form? It might make things harder because you can't reach out and hug them, but it could be pretty incredible in terms of being able to see that person who maybe you haven't seen for many months. That's all we've got time for the lead story. It's time now for the halftime report. Jeremy, hit me with one takeaway from the first half of the show talking about the metaverse.
I think one takeaway is that Marcus picks things that are hard to pronounce for some reason to challenge himself. But no, in all seriousness, I would say, one takeaway is that the metaverse is still being defined. And if you think of this as a little bit of a gold rush, where a number of different companies see a major opportunity in front of them, it's going to be a very fun area to cover for a while to come. And I think we're going to know a lot more about what it's going to look like, but that probably won't be for a few years. It's really in its formative stages.
That's all we've got time for the lead story. Time now for In Other News. First, quick word from our sponsor, Newstar. Are you prepared for marketing's next chapter? You won't want to miss Brave New World's 2021, the virtual marketing and analytics event of the year on November 9th and 10th. Join Brave New Worlds to learn how you can adapt to the forces redefining advertising. It's free, and you'll hear from today's top minds in marketing data and analytics, including executives from Facebook, General Motors, Capgemini, and Publicis, and more. Go to bravenewworlds.newstar to register today. Folks, we are back today in other news. What did the new James Bond movie tell us about the state of movie theatres and the prospects of alternative movie theatre content? Story 1, the latest James Bond film, No Time to Die, opens to a worse than expected $56 million US box office showing 2 weekends ago, notes Media Post. Analysts had expected nearly double. It did cost $250 million to make, after all, and MGM Studios spent $25 million promoting the film, notes iSpot.tv. Insider Intelligence analyst Daniel Konstantinovich notes that No Time to Die shows that even with high ad spend, the formula for post-pandemic success is unclear. However, it was a different story across the pond in the UK. Over the opening weekend, it made 26 million quid. British pounds, or 35 million bucks at the box office, not just breaking pandemic records, but also surpassing the opening weekends of the 2 previous Bond films, placing it in the top 5 opening weekends for movies in Britain ever, according to the British Film Institute. Jeremy, what did James Bond's opening weekends tell you about the state of the movie theatre business?
So first off, it is a little bit difficult because everybody wants to make predictions after each movie that comes out, right? Because you see like Black Widow underperformed, and then there was the question of Disney+. I think in the US, it is interesting to note that Shang-Chi, which we kind of compared Bond to in the eMarketer briefing story that we wrote about this, Shang-Chi was something that was not a known property, that was not really advertised before the pandemic. Bond, on the other hand, people had seen all the trailers a year and a half ago. And that to me is one of those things where it's very hard to know how much of an impact that happened to be. Just the very fact that it was a stop and start kind of advertising. It was supposed to come out, about 3 weeks, I believe, into the pandemic. Obviously, all of that didn't happen. At the same time, there is also a question of, are people just getting used to the fact that, particularly Warner Brothers with HBO Max, that there are a lot of things that are just released at the same day at home? And does that sync other movies that are not same day release at home? Because people are just used to the fact that movies should be available at home on the same day that they come out in theaters. So that's a bit of an unknown, but it is a little surprising, the fact that it was not able to perform at Shang-Chi-like levels, considering the familiarity with the character.
A few things for me. One, the expectations for No Time to Die were perhaps a little bit high. Daniel Craig's previous 2 Bond films, Skyfall and Spectre, were the second and third highest grossing films ever, at least at the British box office. 2, talked about Shang-Chi, the question still remains, what is the right release model? Hybrid release model for Disney's other superhero film, Black Widow, which did well, making 80 million at the box office, the most any film released in the wake of the COVID pandemic. Theatre-only release models like Shang-Chi, Disney's Labor Day release, that one broke box office expectations, making 76 million over the opening weekend. Venom, latest installment, Let There Be Carnage, made 90 million, beating No Time to Die and the other 2 Marvel films. films. And then finally, it's still a global pandemic, so how much can you really read into these numbers? Going back to the movies might have less to do with seeing Daniel Craig's final Bond film and more to do with the fact that there were 90,000 odd daily COVID cases in the US, 37,000 daily COVID cases in the UK still. So it's still a very weird world. Story 2. Alexander Gladstone of the Wall Street Journal writes that many movie theaters are now experimenting with what they call alternative content, entertainment that aren't Hollywood blockbusters. For example, playing video games on the big screen, watching a sporting event like a UFC fight or a World Cup game, or like AMC just announced they plan on showing certain live NFL games in movie theaters, hosting private screenings for colleagues or friends and family, renting out a screen for folks to participate in a fantasy football draft, perhaps. Alternative content currently amounts to a single-digit percentage of what is shown in theaters, but is estimated to grow to as much as 20% in the future, notes Mr. Gladstone's article. Jeremy, alternative content at movie theaters, is it a gimmick, or will alternative content end up accounting for over half of the revenue movie theaters make?
Even though it's hard to say exactly what the overall split winds up being for movie theaters down the line, generally speaking, innovation happens when people need it, right? So the very fact that movie theaters had to move in this direction means that they're trying out a lot of different things. Some chains are doing screenings of Ted Lasso and getting a lot of people together for that, because you wouldn't have 60 people over to your house to watch an Apple TV Plus shows, right? So there are all these different things that movie theaters are experimenting with, and they're going to be finding out what works and what doesn't. And probably we're going to see a little bit of a stabilization here, and this will be some ancillary income for them, but there will be probably like a few specific alternative revenue streams that most movie theaters will go to, in addition to showing, the latest blockbusters.
Yeah, talking about alternative revenue streams, Mr. Gladstone of the Journal pointing out another strategy for movie theater owners, which is to enhance the cinematic experience with special guests, performers, saying last summer actor Anthony Michael Hall hosted a pre-movie talk and screening of The Breakfast Club for 750 million people. Post-screening discussions are also a way to go. Second point here is most alternative content, TV shows and sports, can be transmitted to theaters through a broadband internet connection. However, fewer than half of US theaters have screens that are internet streaming enabled. In fact, most US theaters, he notes, still rely on downloading files from satellites or on shipments of physical hard drives containing films, which they then load onto their computers. Distributor of pay-per-view sporting entertainment company Johan Promotions thinks that movie theaters are going to become community gathering centers for special events. That's all we've got time for today's episode. Thank you so much to my guest. Thank you, Jeremy.
Great to be with you as always.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. And thanks to everyone listening in. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the Behind the Numbers Daily, the eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar. Ernest Cliney's, I think, 2000.
Sorry, Marcus. I just keep it's Ernest Cline for Ready Player One. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, I guess it would be. It would be Line. So if you pronounce that, it would be line. But Cline's normally with like a KL. Thank you very much. Ernest Cline's 2011 novel Ready Player One. I was way off with Cliney.